Hello, my name is Dawn Colley and I work for the Manx Wildlife Trust, and today we're going to be looking at trees. So we've come up into Glen Elfin and I wanted particularly to show you this tree here. This is a lovely oak tree. So we've got the trunk coming up here. You see on this one that there's actually like 3 separate trunks, which is quite unusual. Oak is usually known as the king of the trees because usually it grows very straight and tall and is very, very strong. In Manx we call it darag. The reason these are split here is in the First World War these were actually coppiced for the wood. There was never a lot of wood from when man came along left on the island, so our oldest trees are usually found in these lovely glens where it's very steep sided, so the wood couldn't get extracted. So if you can see all the way down the trunk, it is absolutely covered in moss, just loads and loads of moss. And what's fantastic about this site in Glen Elfin is this is actually a Celtic rainforest, or a temperate rainforest. Not many people know we have a rainforest on the Isle of Man. So all that moisture is supporting all this lovely moss. And oak itself has very, very deep fissures, that's cracks running down the bark. So if we look, we've got the trunks. If we head on up, you come to the branches and then through to the twigs. And with oak, it's very typical that you get these very curving branches. Sometimes they almost curl back on themselves, almost do a loop back. Okay, so this tree here, we think is probably about 12 meters high. So this tree here is doing a fantastic job for us. It is taking every day 12 buckets worth of water right the way up that trunk to the very tip of the leaves in the summer. From there, it's given us 1,700 litres of oxygen for us all to breathe in, and it produces 12 pounds of carbohydrates every day as well. So it's doing a fantastic job for us. It's got that it's reusing that carbon. It's part of our carbon cycle. So this tree is absolutely amazing. It also supports over 300 different species of insects. Oak trees are fantastic for wildlife, and if we look very carefully in the branches, you'll actually see evidence, even though it's winter, of the insects that have been living on this tree, because we've got some very round balls on the tree. You can see them stuck together. You just zoom in on it. Okay, these are called oak apple balls. We've come into the heart of what was the Clebain plantation, and what's happened here, you can see a huge cleared area. The Manx Wildlife Trust has, in conjunction with DEFRA, cleared some of the old larch trees. The reason for that, it sounds terrible to be taking trees down, but larch have a total blocking effect for sunlight. So what happens is what we call the understory, or all the plants on the woodland floor, don't get a chance to have a real good growing season. So by chopping them down, we've opened up the area, and now we should have plenty of bluebells and woodland flowers in this area now. So we've come to have a little look at this tree stump here. When we look at this cut tree here, this stump here, it gives us all the structure of the tree. So right in the middle here, it's actually full of dead cells, and they go very woody and full of cellulose, so they're very, very strong. So this is called the heartwood. The area around the heartwood is full of tiny little tubes called xylem, and what they're doing is they're taking the nutrients from the roots in the springtime, forcing them up the trunk and providing that burst of energy for the leaves to start growing from the buds. So they're sort of like a storehouse really in the transport system. Just here, this very thin little section here, okay, it's called the inner bark, and in that are the tubes called the phloem. And what they're doing is they're taking the sugars when the tree is in leaf back down to the root system. And then finally, this very rough looking outer layer is called the bark, and it has several functions. It regulates how much water is lost by the tree, And it's a bit like our skin really. It protects the growing part of the tree underneath. This is why we always say be very careful with bark. Don't damage bark, because otherwise fungus and things can get into the tree. This one is showing this lovely ring pattern just here. Okay, and you can actually tell the age of a tree by counting up those rings. So we're going to have a go at finding out how old this tree is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44 years old. It's actually quite difficult to tell when they're so weathered like this to actually see all the rings. You probably notice some of these rings are fatter in certain areas and then they go thinner, and this is called buttressing. And what happens is it's the tree building up the structure so it stays nice and firm. We've had a good look at the main trunk, and now we're going to have a look at the roots. You can see them coming away from the tree here. These are the woody roots. These are the ones that are helping hold the whole structure of the tree firm. A lot of people thought that there was a massive taproot that used to go down that held the tree upright, but it actually isn't. They actually spread out, and most trees only go about 2 meters into the ground, so it's not really that deep. These lovely woody roots store some of the sap, all those lovely sugars, over winter, so that of course they can kickstart the tree. But the ones that are doing all the work are the really fine hair-like roots that go and exchange with fungus and get nutrients into the sap of the tree. There's a fantastic network of roots all around us reaching out, and now they're finding out that trees can actually talk to each other, they can support each other. If there's an attack by aphids or fungus in the area, they can alert other trees around. And they've even found out that some species of trees can support their own saplings, so they can actually direct their own sugars towards that sapling to support it, and so it outcompetes the other trees around it. That's quite an extreme way of finding out the age of a tree, by having to cut it down and then count the rings. But there is actually an easier way. Just like we grow taller as we get older, trees also grow taller, but they also grow fatter. I think some of us grow a bit fatter as we get older as well. Now, different trees grow at slightly different rates. So on oak, it's about 1.8 centimetres a year. However, with larches, with pines, it's about 3.1 centimetres a year. But just to make things a bit easier, we take an average of about 2.5 for this. So if the tree's getting fatter each year and bigger, okay, we can work out the age using that rate. So all we need to do is measure around the tree. Now you need to measure about a metre and a half off the ground. You can either bring a tape measure, or if you don't want to bring a tape measure on a walk, just give your tree a hug and remember where your hands overlap. So mine came on that hand to the knuckles on that hand. So that was about 90 centimetres. So this tree here is about 36 years old. And it's always such a lovely thing to do on a walk, is to try and guess the age of a tree, then measure it and work out the rough age.